So, as you know, I got a XS 400. It is a 1970. It's got a lot of weird stuff about it. I'm documenting every bit of the process that I can, so that way you guys are part of the build process, and if you ever have questions about general maintenance or anything like that, feel free to drop comments below. But overall, I would like you guys to, if you guys are thinking about building a bike, that is, here is some of the normal stuff that you'll go through when you have a bike in a box or a barn find or that kind of thing. When I got the motorcycle, it was on Craigslist. I paid about 500 bucks for it. It was quite literally a bike in a box. It ran at one point, and I have a video of it running, which is on my phone, and it's a crappy little snippet of like, yeah, it makes sound kind of thing, but it requires a lot of work. The guy who had it before the guy I got it from threw $2,600 in parts at it, and then the guy I got it from threw $600 in parts at it, and had the frame welded up to be a hardtail. Frame is from TC Brothers, I think, or the kit for it. It just basically, you cut everything off, you slide it right on, and then you weld it together, and then you're done. Unfortunately, that sacrifices the kickstand for the bike, so it requires a new one, which I have ordered basically all of my parts as far as I can tell. So that's basically where I am up to speed right now. I've had the bike for 2 weeks, and I've had a little bit of time of thinking it over and how I want it to look and what I will need in general. So the bike needs a complete wiring harness. So our first priority, or one of the priorities for this thing to get running, is it needs an ignition circuit. If it doesn't have one, it doesn't run, period. It needs also a, I want to call them a junction box, but I know that's not correct. It's more like a terminal box. It's basically a post with a bunch of terminals on it, and it feeds to ground, and power comes in, and then power goes out to whatever you want. So your horn circuit, your ignition circuit, your light circuit, your whatever circuit. All that is ran off that. So power from the stator, regulator, rectifier comes into that, and then out to whatever it is, and then to ground, which goes back to the battery, and the battery kicks over and runs everything on a 12-volt system, and the regulator rectifier soaks up that energy or retards it enough to where it's all, that would be my cat, retards it enough to where it's 12 volts and they're not fluctuating all the time. Usually you can tell if you can rev your engine and your lights go really bright and really dim, really bad, that's usually your regulator going out, and your stator is putting more power out and then less power out throughout the RPM range. When you, that would be my AC system. When you rev your engine, your bike doesn't actually start charging the battery until about 3,500 RPM, depending on the bike. This might be lower depending on what model motorcycle you have or what it is in general. I know a lot of you are wondering, well, why not just convert it over to full kickstart? I might do that eventually, but as far as right now, I don't mind having a battery. I would actually like to not have a battery, but I don't have enough money for a magneto. I don't want to drop the 500 bucks it takes to get one basically made for this bike, plus a little extra, because they make them for the 650s, but I've never seen one for the 400s. So it needs basically a little juice to get going, and then that's it, which is weird. There is a PMA system, I think, that TC Brothers sells. Basically, all the parts for it are almost like $1,000. So to get the bike to full kick without a battery is 1,000 bucks, which right now I'm not willing to spend on that. I do have a ton of history on the bike. Like I said, it's a 1970, which this is the weird part. Title says 1970. This is a 1970 plate. The VIN number on it is during the time where they only had 9 VIN numbers on a motorcycle, and it basically says it's a 1977 through 79, which I don't understand how. Thinking, because the VIN matches up on the engine and the title. The one on the frame has been scratched off. So that makes me think this bike has been dropped at one point. The engine's solid, so if the bike was dropped at one point, new frame, I don't care. I know the guy, 2 people, the second owner ago that had it, was riding it around. Not very well, but it basically, like, he could putt around his neighborhood. He had the original back brake on it and then tried to lop off the rear master cylinder mount and move it somewhere else, which I don't know where because I need to remount it. So he basically cut a little bit of it off, and then now I have to get that repaired. Other than that, that's basically where it stands. It's got 2 new wheels. It needs basically, okay, so let's start from square one. What does the bike need to just get going and down the street? Right now, I need all of my cases put back together. I'm missing a sprocket cover case, or a sprocket cover, that the bike won't disengage the clutch unless that sprocket cover is on it, because there's a spline on the sprocket cover that reaches out and pushes on a pin, which opens up the clutch, and if that pin isn't opened up, I'm basically in neutral, period. Or I can slam it into first and then never stop, or barely get it out of first and grind into second and third. It's just not worth it. So I need to do that. So that means probably about $100 in nuts and bolts, stuff that won't seize up or anything like that. I have all the electronics I need. I need to start making a wiring harness. So what I'm going to do is order a bunch of wire. Actually, I have ordered a bunch of wire for that. I've got a, fuse box on the way. I'm not going to use the junction terminal thing that they have because it's just a chintzy piece of crap. It's literally a bar with a couple posts on it, and one of the posts broke, so I don't feel safe using it, and that's exposed to the elements. So if I'm ever riding in the rain, that's a bad time. I need to figure out whether the carburetors are balanced or not, so I'm going to need a carburetor balancing tool. I need to figure out whether the bike kicks over or not. What I actually have, I've kicked it a few times. The engine runs free. It has compression. You can hear it. You can feel it. When I cover the inlets or the intake, it makes a terrible pop sound. And that's like, it tries to suck in whatever's covering the intake, so that's good. When it compresses, it actually builds up compression, so that's good. It's not just like smoothly spinning the entire time. You should feel, as you're moving through it, kicking it, that it has more of a resistance when it reaches top dead center. I also need to do the valves on it. These are tappet valves. They're a lot like the DR, so it's basically get it to top dead center, take the case off, or take the cover off, shim it, feel it, or feeler gauge it, and then move the tappet in or out, figure out if it's in spec or not. It probably is, or if it isn't, it's probably barely out of spec because Japanese people really, really knew their motorcycles well. The DR is a 98 and it's been out of spec once, and I think I caused that because I wanted to be on the lower end of the spectrum, and the next time I checked it, it was insignificantly out of spec. Quite literally, when I unlocked the lock nut, it was in spec again. So there's that as far as the maintenance and all that kind of stuff goes. I want to change the oil in it because I don't know how long it's been sitting. That's really like the bare minimum of what I need. What we'll be going through though is everything from start to finish. So I'm going to pull the front wheel apart. I'm going to figure out if it needs bearings because I noticed that there's a lot of free play, not laterally because I'm missing a spacer, but this direction, which is not good because if you can lock your handlebars in one direction and the wheel still has play that way, that's not a good thing. I'm guessing it might be needle bearings in there, which if that, or roller bearings, if that's a thing, then that accounts for the play, so the spacers aren't locking those down, so that makes sense to me. I do have a spacer on order, or sorry, a spacer kit from TC Brothers. The front end is a motor, what is it? A Moto Iron Springer front end. It's -2 inches from a wide glide Harley Davidson, which I know Harley. I'm not really a fan of Harley, but basically it's. I mean, I'm working with what I got. A lot of these are Harley fittable parts, but they're not to Harley specifically. They were just made to be something else that caters to an audience. So there's that, and then I'm also going to get a fake oil tank, a fake battery box. Like I said, I've got the wire. I need a horn at one point because I would like to be able to communicate with somebody if they're about to back over me. What else do I need? I'm going to sort through parts. It came with a bunch of parts, as you can see here. I also need to mount the gas tank, find some springs and mount the springs for my seat. I also ordered another set of handlebars because those ape hangers, I've never wanted to drive a couch or a lazy boy. I don't understand what ape hangers are about, because that is the equivalent of having a 5-foot wide steering wheel in your car. I can't drive when I can't move my frickin' hands out the car to turn the wheels. So it's very detached. I come from a sport riding background. That's why I like the DR so much, is because it had a nice neutral / aggressive feel, and I could feel and use leverage to actually move the motorcycle, versus the ape hangers they're very narrow, they're not very wide, they don't have a lot of control, they're not very wide, and they're narrow gripped. So that's what I mean by that. So I ordered not flat track bars, but the old school, old style bobber bars, which are basically they're like dirt bike bars on steroids. They're wider, they're older. They're also 1 inch because the person that got the risers for them, they're 1 inch risers. So now I have to figure out whether I need special grips or mounting brackets or anything for like turn signals or whatever. I don't know if I'm going to have turn signals on this. It's a 1970, so anything pre-74 is not required, but I do like to communicate, and if that saves my life, then so be it. I'll use a set of dorky turn signals on my motorcycle. Plus, it's something else to route, so it's not like I'm really, against it. I just have to make the brackets for it. Since I'm getting a kickstand welded on, and a battery box, and a fake oil tank, I might as well just take the extra time to cut some pieces of bracket and then just make some turn signal brackets for it. So as far as that goes, yeah, that's step one. So if you guys are unclear about step one, if you find a bike that you find could run, step one is make a list of everything it needs. Absolutely everything. Start going through the bike and everything that's wrong with it. Put in one column everything it needs to get running, in another column everything that's cosmetic. Leave in a third column that's last. Get it running, get it safe. Cosmetics are last. So that's basically step one is plan. Plan the shit out of it. Plan exactly, Cat. I think my cat's dying. Oh, he brought me a mouse. Thank you. That's very kind of you. So that's step one. Plan like crazy. Like I said, I've made some audio logs. I'll be playing those every time I'm working on the bike. It was basically, I started making them day one. So day one was when I started going through the machine, started planning, started figuring out what it needed, all that kind of stuff, or what was wrong with it, and starting to fix those small things that were irredeemably wrong. So